Everybody knows that Pops Coffee is a big fan of Shaye Cohn. So I'm going to ask you, Pops, could you start by telling us a little bit about Shaye and her background? Shaye comes from a family of musicians, and in fact, her own mother and father are both very fine jazz musicians themselves. And she started playing the piano from a very early age when she was a little girl, and she obviously enjoyed it and worked very hard at it. And by the time she reached college age in New York City, she actually studied classical piano at college with violin as her second instrument. At that time, of course, there was no thought of her being a really great brass instrument player. But eventually she decided to move to New Orleans to try to meet up with other jazz musicians that she could play with. And what happened after Shaye settled in New Orleans? In New Orleans, Shaye met up with all the other musicians who were working in the streets there, but most importantly, she played in a group known as Loose Marbles, which was a band run by Michael Magro and Ben Polser. And many of today's really outstanding musicians went through the ranks of Loose Marbles. It was a very good band in itself, but also a very good training ground for players who were rapidly wanting to improve and branch out and form bands of their own. And in Loose Marbles was the nucleus of Tuba. When Shaye first joined it, she was, of course, a pianist, but she obtained a very old Yamaha cornet, taught herself how to play it, and it was a year or two later that she had the beginnings with Todd Burdick of the band that today is known as Tuba, and they branched out and developed over the next 12 years into the band we have today. And now that Shaye is considered the musical director and the leader of Tuba, what would you say are her leadership qualities? Well, in fact, there are so many. For a start, she's got to remember hundreds of tunes, not just remember the tunes, but also remember the way that Tuba has arranged them with its introductions, codas, the order of events. She's very, very good at setting the tempo at the beginning of tunes. She taps the beat in with her foot usually, hearing the tune in her head and getting it absolutely right. And she's constantly thinking ahead. What are we going to do with the next chorus? Who's going to lead it? And she doesn't encourage any prima donna performances from anybody in the band, including herself. She just wants good teamwork, good collective improvisation. She gives very, very clear signals. She divides up the choruses between players, so they take a segment each. She indicates who's to lead, and she also has worked out what sort of backing rhythm and backing harmonization should be provided and how this should be done, which instruments should be providing the backing. What about Shaye's own playing of the cornet? Can you possibly describe that for us? Shaye's not one of those show-off players like some trumpet players and cornet players who like to scream around high notes. You don't catch her doing that sort of thing. She's much more concerned to be a team player. She wants the sound of the band to be good, not just herself as an outstanding soloist. So she's constantly listening to the other players, working in beautifully with what they're doing. In spite of this, she can be a good driving lead, which is very, very important. And her improvisations, whether they're in collective or whether they're in her solos, they are so brilliant. They're energetic, they're fluent, they tear around the chords, but they also include such notes as flattened thirds, flattened sevenths, sixths and ninths. Sometimes she plays very delicately behind, for example, other soloists, supporting what they're doing, or particularly behind Erica when Erica is singing. She plays beautiful harmonizations. Listen out for those. But essentially, I think what makes her so great is that she is playing for the team, and she's out to make her band sound great and not simply to show off and be a sort of prima donna. Thanks, Pops, and thanks to everybody for watching. What better way can we finish than having a look and listen to Shaye actually performing with Tuba.